Oh, hey there, Z.
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, well, I guess despite the fact that we've been doing this for 8 months, we're going to call this our first episode of this podcast project we've been working on.
Yeah, we've been throwing them up on YouTube. It kind of gives a psychological difference whenever you start recording and then you get to the next step of actually releasing it to people. And I wanted to put our best foot forward before we started releasing them to the podcast players. So we are going to turn back the clocks and say this is number one.
All right, and fingers crossed, we'll press on that this is going to be the quality we're looking for. Z and I met each other many years back. We both were in the Air Force. We were in training together, but we hadn't clicked yet. We ended up getting the same assignment, and we actually lived in dorms across the hall from each other for over a year. And that's when we really bonded and realized that we have a chemistry with each other that made a lot of people laugh. So that mixed with my super passion for wanting to get involved in something like this. I have been listening to radio for decades, talk radio, I should say. The Two Dudes Talking format was a part of my life since about 8th grade. And when I had joined the Air Force, I chose the career path of ground radio, thinking that this would help me get training in the future if I ever wanted to get into actual terrestrial radio. Why did you pick ground radio for yourself as your career?
I took a different stance. I don't know if you were as informed as I was about the actual career field. For those who don't know, whenever you take this aptitude test and they say, hey, these are the jobs you'd be good at, they list these jobs that you've really never heard of because they are in military speak.
That's right. It's a very obscure list you're looking at.
And I was told that with your background in audiovisual, you would be good as a radio maintainer.
Okay.
So I took the opportunity to get into electronics, where it sounds like you took the opportunity to get into the concept of radio itself and learn about the ways that it works.
Yes, the equipment. And I did. I got a lot out of the training. I enjoyed it.
As Paul said, we were across the hall from each other, and we just, over time, became more and more comfortable with each other and had more and more fun conversations.
Sure.
And it was not uncommon for a third party to just kind of sit and listen and enjoy and hopefully sometimes partake in the conversation, but not necessarily always. It was like a regular radio show anyway. They would tune in whenever they were available and then just tune out whenever they could. And we really enjoyed it. This new podcast medium, I should say new. I'm late to the game as far as podcasts, both listening and obviously recording. But this was a great opportunity for us to give it a shot ourselves.
Right. Make no mistake, we did not stay in touch and like brothers all the time in between. We separated from the military, we found wives, we had children, and now we decided we're at a point in our life where if we're going to get something done, we just have to go ahead and do it. So here it is.
So this is our chance to take we should do this thought into putting forth the effort and making it a hobby, and it's been a lot of fun so far. And this is the inaugural kickoff to our official podcast.
This is Delta 1400 security.
You are listening to Ground Radio.
And I always remember feeling a very unique feeling beginning to listen to a radio show or a podcast where you have two people talking and you're not sure who's who yet and what their names are and what kind of people they are.
I'm still not certain you actually even said your name yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Your name is Paul.
When I said, "Hey, how you doing, Z?" or whatever, I was hoping that you would respond with
Oh, it's my fault. It's my fault. Okay, it's my fault you didn't introduce yourself. So welcome to the podcast. Most likely what you did is you opened up your podcast player, you found the icon on your phone, you clicked it, you found us, and you started listening. Through all this, you are using your senses. Senses are the ability to process information from the external or internal sources. You know the common ones, which are sight, which is what you use to find the podcast, hearing, which is what you're doing to hopefully enjoy the podcast, touch, which is the feeling of the device you're using, And I don't think you're using taste and smell at the time to enjoy the podcast, but maybe you're having a drink or something. Those are the 5 senses that you were taught in school, correct?
Yeah. That's what I always learned. 5 senses, that's what we have. That's how we process our reality.
I don't think that that's the whole story behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of hoping we could kind of overanalyze and look into some of these senses. I wanted to take a look to see if there were more senses that maybe we have that we don't pay attention to. And I wanted to look at how other people who have problems with their senses, how they experience the world.
These are things that you don't think about every day, but when you do think about it, it's a very thought-provoking subject.
You have heard of people who have a problem with them, or if maybe they don't have the ability at all, such as sight. You have people who are blind, or people who have poor eyesight, people who are deaf for hearing. Taste you don't hear much about, but it is not uncommon that somebody would have a problem with their taste sensors. Smell. You would think that sometimes that's a benefit, and we'll get into that. And touch.
I remember as a child just completely not understanding how Helen Keller experienced the world, not having both sight and hearing, and being amazed that we have quotes from her. I believe Helen Keller's written books, and thinking, how is this possible? How can someone overcome being in the dark like that?
I have no idea how someone can experience life without the senses at the abilities that I have. I always believe that we lived in our own heads.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is what my sensors pick up may not necessarily be what your sensors pick up. So do you experience things different from me?
Right.
This was always the question I had. Is my red the same color as your red?
I find it funny that you used to ask that question. I asked a very similar question when I was a child. And when, in full reality, I knew 2 individuals who were colorblind. So I already had the answer to my question. No, we don't all see the same red. Colorblind people, which as a child I pictured they were seeing in black and white, but that's not really the case either. But still, shades are different and colors are different to decipher. Honestly, I get in arguments with my wife sometimes over what the color of this or that is, and we can't believe each other.
I always equated it to maybe a little experiment where I hand you a box, and inside of the box is something you've never seen before. You look at it, and I tell you, this is a widget.
Okay.
And then I give someone else another box, and I tell them that's a widget. They don't know what each other has seen, but they know that's a widget. So if they're describing it, it could be completely different because there was a different experience per person.
Yes, they have a word association with widget that's different from each other.
So as you are growing up in this world and you see the color red, you are taught this is red. This is red. Everything that you know is that color is red. But that's not necessarily what everyone else sees. So if you can wrap your head around living inside of your own head and knowing that your experiences are going to be different from anyone else's experiences, that's the mindset you have to get in whenever we start talking about some of these sensory disorders.
Well, yes, and I've seen, it was like swatches on the screen, and they did a study. There were other cultures who don't differentiate blue and green the way that we do. So they will have a color wheel of different shades of blue with a green mixed in, and to us, it's an eyesore, and to them, it blends. It was very interesting to see how the way that we group colors and the way that other cultures group colors can change vastly how you see the world around you.
And that same goes with taste. I mean, that's probably the most prevalent example of how growing up in your culture, you have a different appreciation for different tastes than any other culture. If you've traveled around, you might find some amazing food here, or you might find some food that is just repulsive to you, but the locals just love it.
Right.
There are different aspects of these senses that we actually refine and we use over time that we appreciate differently. Now, imagine if average light or a respectable level of sound actually hurt you. Generally, people will have a acceptable level of both light or sound. There are
Yes.
certain levels, especially for working in an industry, if you have to use hearing protection over a certain decibel level, that is a standard set by an average reading of what an individual can tolerate.
Yes.
There are people who cannot tolerate even the most minimum of those.
Yes, the norms don't apply to them because they have a different threshold.
The first disorder that we looked into was sensory processing disorder.
I would say that autism would be an example of a sensory processing disorder. We have autism in our family, and I wasn't informed at first that autism was related to the senses at all. I didn't have that kind of grasp on it. So when it was explained to me that way, the behaviors made a lot more sense to me. And what you notice about individuals with autism is that they have hypersensitivities and hyposensitivities, which is very confusing. But if you just remember, hyper means over and hypo means under. There are individuals with autism who get very disturbed by loud noises and background noises that most of us can ignore, like traffic noise or a refrigerator hum or something like that, and they really focus in on it. And it's distracting for them. It's hard for them to process between the senses once they're overstimulated in one area.
Yeah, sensory processing disorder is tied to autism often. The case that I have seen in my life, friend son of mine,
Okay.
he's not allowed to listen to music because his abilities to control himself whenever there's loud music, or not
Okay.
even loud, to us it's standard, he ends up getting violent.
Wow. Okay.
It's very strange listening to a child listen to Let It Go from Frozen and actually getting upset and angry because of the noises.
Because it overstimulates him.
Yes. The other ones that we looked into are synesthesias.
Oh, yes, where your senses cross each other.
So synesthesists, which I love the fact that we're going to try to do our first podcast with the phrase synesthesist in it. It's going to sound wonderful on the microphone.
Yesterday you said synesthete.
Synesthete.
Because I remembered it was like athlete.
Synesthete. Yes. Synesthetes. This is enjoyable podcasting radio. Synesthetes are individuals that have a link between one or more sensory perceptions, and often it leads to confusion.
I could see how that would be confusing. So you're saying, like, I say Wednesday and they see yellow.
Yeah. This is possibly the hardest thing that I could ever try to discuss on our very first podcast, is to tell somebody that someone can hear a word and see a color.
Or taste a flavor.
And taste a flavor.
My question about this synesthesia is it subjective, or are there across-the-board agreements? And I had a podcast experience where there were synesthetes who were requesting words by each of the hosts to see which one would taste better, which word would taste better off of which person. And I thought that was pretty bizarre. And I realized that they were in agreement at the end of it. When they said one of them was better, it seemed like all of them felt the same way, which I would think it would be a completely subjective experience.
It sounds like that person had lexical-gustatory synesthesia.
Yes.
This individual would hear certain words, and a taste would roll over their tongue.
Yes. And like tastes of specific foods or desserts, it was very strange to hear the things that they taste. It wasn't just like salty or bitter or sweet. It was like, oh no, this tastes like
raspberry yogurt.
Yeah, perfect.
The way someone said it would either increase or decrease the flavor of it.
Okay.
But it seemed to be across the board. If we say fun, they might taste pineapple.
Uh-huh.
Or if we say headache, or as I say in central Pennsylvania, headache, it would taste better one way or another. Which, by the way, that's been an ongoing thing between our recordings. If anyone has lexical-gustatory synesthesia, please let me know which one tastes better.
Which headache?
Which headache tastes better?
It's surprising how much the word headache comes up.
Oh, it's coming. Don't worry. There's another one. Another synesthesia that we have talked about briefly was the chromesthesia. People experience colors when they hear sounds.
So words give them a feeling. They can literally see colors in front of. Do they have to close their eyes?
This is the hardest one for me to research because the biggest problem they have is if you have the word Wednesday written down.
Okay.
And they see the word and they hear it in their head, they associate it with the color purple, let's say.
Okay.
But if it's written in green, there will be a conflict in their brain. It won't seem logical to them that the word Wednesday is green instead of purple.
Mm-hmm.
These synesthesias affect somewhere between 0.4 and 2% of people in the world. But artists have upwards to 20% affected by things such as chromesthesia or something similar to it.
So people whose senses cross like that probably have a higher tendency to go down the artist road just because of how in tune they are with their artistic experiences.
It's very possible. How somebody can be a synesthete, one theory came from brain development. As you are developing, these senses are more intermingled than they are now. As you get older, they start separating.
Right.
Well, some of these synesthetes, it's thought that their connections weren't as defined in development.
Yes.
So they can have maybe an in-tune ability to connect someone with sound and color that they feel is an obvious connection, but maybe us as somebody who has those defined paths, it's more intriguing to us. There's something about that speaks to me, and I don't understand where the artist clearly knows what they're doing.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of that situation where the brain designates hemispheres. The way it was explained to me was the most complicated things that humans do is speech and what you can do with your hands.
Dominant side, okay.
Yeah. So the brain divides it into two parts, but there's people who are ambidextrous and they don't suffer the ability to do things equally with both hands.
I dated a woman, and she had a young girl who was 5 at the time. Kind of at the time where they're starting to get more independence in doing basic things.
Okay.
Tying shoes, playing sports, stuff like that. We found out that she was ambidextrous. Dude, that is so hard to teach somebody who's ambidextrous how to do anything. Because
they're not consistent?
They are not consistent whatsoever. She was. Maybe people are different, but I've noticed that with her, it got to the point where I was teaching her how to do something right-handed, and she wasn't very good at it. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe she's just not really good at baseball or softball or whatever we were playing. And then she would just randomly switch left-handed and just be perfect. But tennis, she was right-handed. So it got to the point where I was just throwing equipment at her, and whatever hand she caught it with, that's the one that we went with. Because she would catch just as well left or right. So whenever I'm trying...
That is a surprising result.
It is. It didn't fail me. Teaching her how to tie her shoes, it was a nightmare because I would teach one way, but it wasn't natural for her. So whenever we talk about these mixed senses, I think of this because it's so hard to put yourself in someone else's head whenever you know your right hand is dominant, but to them it might feel like they're left, or it might feel 50-50, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think they're very related. That now that you said it that way, it's like pathways that haven't closed up.
And finally, we have mirror touch.
Mirror?
Yeah. It had a long name that had synesthesia on it, but I kept mispronouncing it. 1.6% of people are diagnosed with this mirror touch synesthesia. It's whenever you're looking at someone and say they press on their nose, you will feel that. I
see. Okay. Because when I was reading about it, I was thinking this is something that horror movies try to capitalize on when, someone's getting chopped with a chainsaw and you kind of sit there and squirm in your seat. But you're saying like even non-painful things.
Well, 1.6% of people are diagnosed with maybe the small things, such as a touch to the face or just maybe bending a finger. They will feel that. 30% of us, and I'm going to say us because I feel it too, have a mild form where if they see somebody in pain, they will feel a minor amount of pain.
Mm-hmm. We've all seen America's Funniest Home Videos where some guy gets kicked in the balls and we all kind of grab our junk and go, "Oh man, that looks."
I'll say half our audience has felt that, but but it has to do with empathy.
Yeah.
So this is where it's strange where you have to draw the line. Pain, I can totally understand. If I see someone being injured, I'm going to feel some type of response to that.
Yeah.
But if I see somebody brush their hair, I certainly don't feel that.
No.
Those affected by mere touch would.
Say mirror touch.
Mere touch. Mirror touch. Is it that bad? What's that taste like? Anyone know what that tastes like? Mirror touch.
It sounded like you're saying mere touch.
Just a mere touch. Oh, that could be confusing. This is like a linguistical Olympics that we're going through with this first one.
Yeah.
Way to pick the good topic, Z. All right.
Yeah. Well, I still stand by my original statement that it's thought-provoking. We talked about it yesterday, and now we're talking about it again today. I'm having new thoughts, so I like it.
All right. Those are the problems. Not all the problems, but those are just some of the problems we found with the standard 5 senses. How do you feel about that list so far? Pretty solid?
Yeah. As we had started talking about it, I was thinking about how disabling it is to lose some senses.
Well, there are basic ones that the people who are blind and people who are deaf, it really affects their life.
I also had found an interesting YouTube video because I was researching humans that use echolocation as a way to navigate because they are blind. And there's this one, like Tiger Woods of all the echolocators, that he can literally ride a bike and walk through hallways, and he clicks his tongue as he walks, and supposedly not supposedly, he's proving it, he's getting feedback from the sound waves, and he's able to know if there's obstacles in front of him, or he was riding a bike on the street. It was pretty incredible that he was able to do that. And his name was Ben Underwood, and you could YouTube him, and he's definitely like the echolocation superstar. But there are a lot of blind people who are encouraged to experiment with the tongue clicking and the echolocation to make their lives easier. And so maybe they don't need a seeing eye dog 24/7. Maybe they don't need to walk around with a cane. Some senses would just be a minor inconvenience. We were discussing smell, and there are people, I don't know if I know anyone personally, but I know that there are people who don't have a sense of smell. And they probably live fairly normal lives. Maybe my fear is that they probably don't know if they themselves smell bad, or if their house smells bad and need to clean it, like if the house smells like cat feces. But I know that, it's not a disability like not being able to see. I mean, you can't drive, you can't get a lot of jobs. It's just devastating to not have some senses.
There are certain things though that are attached to that. So you would live a fairly normal life and no one would really know that you lack that sense. But
yeah,
from my research, scent is what is most attached to memory.
Yes, I've seen that too. I think that applies very well if, it doesn't matter if you're 20 years older or in a different house or whatever. When I smell mothballs, that reminds me of Grandma's house right away. When I smell Christmas potpourri, that takes me to a certain place. There's an instant association with the scent and the memory, and it's unavoidable.
I noticed that if I have cologne that I used whenever I was a teenager and I happen to smell it again, I think of, the summer when, I got my license or something like that.
My cool water summer.
Oh, yes. The summer of curve. I'm going to propose another issue with that, though.
Okay.
What if those that don't have smell have a gas leak in their house?
Yeah. Okay.
There are social standards and there are safety standards that use these senses.
Yeah.
And they're not going to know if you have a sense of smell or not. Everyone's just going to assume that you do. And they add an additive to natural gas that make it smell like rotten eggs. Natural gas has no scent. But they add this putrid smell to it. That way, if it's a leak, so it will actually trigger in your head, hey, something's not right.
Oh, interesting. So they add that in there just to make sure that it's a safety precaution.
And it's the same with the sense of taste, though, as well. If you eat food that has gone bad and you don't have a sense of taste, you might not know that you are eating something that could be potentially dangerous.
I do use my nose in the fridge a lot. We are definitely the type that save leftovers, and my nose is a great tool to know. As I like to say, the nose knows.
All right, so now we're going to go and we're going to talk about the senses that are not traditional.
The senses that either fall outside the main 5 or they are included into one.
I am going to say that we need to change the ideas of the world from there's 5 senses to there's however many we have decided. The ruling is, on today's show, the definitive podcast on your senses. Today, we are going to find out how many you should actually have.
Okay, and then that for all time, we'll go into textbooks and it will be studied and
yeah. I'm sorry.
revered.
Oh, didn't you know that this is a scientific study? It's kind of like science and philosophy together. It's kind of a big thing.
It's thought-provoking.
It is. I love it whenever a podcast tells you something is interesting or thought-provoking. Like, it just sounds like they're really trying to sell it a lot harder. Like, no, trust me, you should be interested in this. You should be interested in this.
Please listen to the whole thing.
Please, we need sponsors.
It's coming. The good stuff is coming, folks.
Trust me. Trust me.
Stay tuned.
The first sense, balance and acceleration. Thoughts?
Balance and acceleration are essential to survival, and it sounds to me like that fits into the touch category a bit.
Really? I'm okay. I feel like a lot of these you're going to try to put with touch.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Okay.
I feel like this should be a standalone sense because it is a way for you to, and going back to the definition, ability to process information externally, and you're using your equilibrium to determine your balance and your acceleration.
Yeah.
So you're not using the same system.
All right.
Your inner ear, I don't know, that sounds like something that's important. I don't know. If you have an ear problem, don't you always fall over? Is that a...
Yeah, you get permanently dizzy, or
Yeah.
that's what we're told.
Yes.
Have you ever been in one of those little rooms that they can tilt it 15 degrees or whatever, and you're watching a screen and they make it like you've flipped over?
No.
It's mostly for kids. You'll see it at a amusement park or something. You go into this room, and this room is like inside of a ball or something that rotates, and then you're watching the screen, and they'll make you feel like you're on a roller coaster, or they'll make you feel like the room has flipped upside down because it only needs to tilt so much for your equilibrium to be thrown off, and you will believe what your eyes see more than what you're feeling.
Okay, so we had something similar to this at our mall, where they had this big capsule that you would get in. And from the outside, you'd look at that thing, you're like, it's barely moving, it's tilted, it's it could jerk every once in a while, but when you were inside, you were just encased in a screen. And the motions were so exaggerated on the screen, but you're using your different senses, and you're perceiving riding a train or a roller coaster or something.
Yeah, it's an illusion for your equilibrium.
Okay, would that be a pro or a con? If it's so easily fooled, should it be a sense? Optical illusions, I mean, a sight is obviously, and it's constantly being fooled.
Yeah, all right. Equilibrioception officially has sense status.
It's been ruled. That is, way to bust out the scientific word. All right.
I'm glad you
Next
had
one.
gone in one of those, though, because at first I was like, come on. He's got a... There's a few theme parks around PA.
No, it's a traveling show that goes to our mall every once in a while. The social epicenter of our location.
Well, the funny thing about those is I think I've done it about maybe 2 or 3 times. Part of going in there is there's like a disclaimer. There's someone there saying, make sure you don't have heart problems, because it really can be stressful to feel like you might fall out of your chair even though you're completely safe.
Yeah, you're only tilted at 10 degrees, but you feel like you are almost doing. I was inverted. I mean, that's how you feel.
Yeah. All right. So what else we got?
Vibration, the ability to sense mechanical pressure and changes in pressure.
Pressure sounds like touch to me.
I'm gonna agree with you on that one.
Okay. without touch, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And you were able to convince me previously that without touch, you still need balance.
Yeah. I'm going to say vibration. I'm not giving it status on this episode. And I appreciate it coming out. You know, it should be honored. But I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that you will be put into...
It's just touch in two directions.
It's just multiple touching. You can touch two things at once. It's not that hard. We're going to put that under the touch category. I'm sorry.
So that leads us to temperature now. Is that a touch category too? See, temperature is a measure of energy or lack of energy. So that is pretty impressive, that your touch is that fine-tuned that your body can tell there's a lot of energy in this and it's transferring itself to you and damaging your body. Pull away immediately. And that's what happens when you put your hand on the stove.
Okay. But here's the thing about temperature. And there was always this push for it to be sense status. It is both internal and external. Is that still touch if it's something that you can't physically put your hand on? Because your internal temperature will affect the way you touch and perceive things externally.
Temperature is touch, but touch squared.
It takes touch to another level. Is it enough for it to push it over, though? Because it is very specific. And I hate to always say that it has to be a certain... Because all of these are a certain part of the brain.
Right.
Or a gland.
Right, but is it a separate receptor? Is it a separate sensor from... And I would say yes. I would say temperature is extremely important. Your body needs to maintain a certain temperature for survival. I think temperature is its own sense.
You are going to survival a lot. I find that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because you think that it's necessary that we have to develop these? I'm just using it for experiencing the world, but you're just going straight caveman.
I think about how they evolved and why did they endure. Some things evolve and then they fade away out of certain species, and some endure. And what we are is the culmination of all of our genes up until this point, and these are the senses that it was decided were necessary for survival. If they weren't necessary for survival, I believe that the genes would have changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the people who couldn't feel temperature and lived really close to the volcano, you're saying that they probably didn't survive?
I'm thinking that they didn't feel the vibrations either.
Here's another one I'm going to bone up. Kinesthetic sense?
Kinesthetic.
This is the ability to detect and handle movement in relation to your own body. If you're able to close your eyes and touch your nose with one of your hands.
You mean like when you get pulled over and they think you're drinking?
Yes, exactly. The ability to be able to tell where each one of your limbs are independently without using your other senses, that's what kinesthetic is.
Okay. And some people might refer to it as proprioception. Is that correct?
I believe so. I believe they are very tied together. That one seems to have a little more right-left twist to it.
Okay.
For our sake here, I'm going to group those two together.
It is a right-left thing. Tell me if you've heard this, but we could all do this together, or the listeners and you could do this together if you haven't heard this.
All right, I'm ready.
You can take your tongue, flip it over in your mouth, flip it all the way around, and then stick it out and touch one side of it. And when you do, you'll notice that your body doesn't know that you're touching the left side of your tongue or the right side of your tongue. It feels like it's on the side of your body that you touched, even though you flipped it. And the thing that I learned about that is you're fooling your proprioception. You're literally fooling your proprioception because your tongue wasn't equipped with I have a left side and a right side feeling.
Okay. First off, I'm thoroughly impressed you were able to go through that while watching me on video, poking my tongue multiple times. Folks, I did it like 6 or 7 times. And you did get through. That is amazing. That is a gross trick. I mean, it's not really like it's useful, but I could just see if the 6 listeners that we will have just doing this like on a city bus or something, because that's where you listen to podcasts. I don't know about you guys, but
if it gets us one more interested party, it was worth it.
Okay, so that's the ability to trick it. Totally not a standard, but for some reason I'm hanging on to it. What do you think?
It's another illusion, a kinesthetic illusion.
Yes. What do you think?
Yeah, sense. And thinking about it, it made me realize that I suffer a little bit from that. I don't have an intuitive feeling of right and left. It's been a problem for me for years, even when I was a kid, and I noticed that some kids would get asked, which is your right hand, and they would just raise it. And I had to put thought about it, or maybe hold a pencil and...
Which one was more comfortable? That was your tell?
Yeah, and I would still sometimes get it wrong. And then I remember when I was in like second grade and I got the chicken pox, I picked this one chicken pox on my right hand so that it would be a scar, and I still have it today. And that was my go-to, okay, I have a scar on my right hand on the back, and now I know which is right and left.
Was that intentional?
Yeah.
No, you intentionally scarred yourself so you could tell your right and your left?
To label my right hand, yeah. I mean, I didn't make the chicken pox appear there, but...
No, I mean... What? Spreading disease and scarring yourself for life just to help you.
The singular chicken pox.
The one pock. Oh, that's my pock mark. I don't know how I feel about that.
All right. But no, now as an adult, if I'm in the car and I have to make a left,
turn scar.
I don't use my scar. If I'm in the car, I know I have to make a left. It's my side of the car. And if I'm not in the car, I know that I can picture a word in front of me, and whatever the first letter of that word is, that's where left is.
Oh my, that is so exhausting. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm giving that sense status, and I'm giving you disabled status. Congratulations.
Yes. When's my check come?
Well, then, if you're talking about left and right, then we are going to go to the next three in this category, which...
Okay.
I'm just going to go straight to the sense of direction.
Ah, well...
It's your ability to know which way you are facing in certain situations. Okay? Like, can you remember what direction your bed was in whenever we were living in Maryland?
Right. Yes, I know what you mean, and where the door is from there, and where the light source is from there.
Yes.
Okay. See, I tend to want to say that is more of a subjective thing. It's not intuitive. You have to just experience things, and you can either get better at it or pay less attention to it and not foster that ability. But the way you just described it with the bed location, yeah, it applies.
To me, and when I don't know if I'd like... there were so many definitions of what a sense of direction is. That one stuck out to me because it was the most relatable, but I also feel like that is just very heavy on memory.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been told on multiple occasions through multiple different scenarios that I have a terrible sense of direction. I am going to abstain from voting because I think that I have no real input on this one. This is all on you.
Well, I like what you said about the memory.
No pressure, but it's all on you.
It is. Oh, boy. Well, I think it is heavily... Now that... boy, am I swayable. Now,
sorry, I'm so persuasive.
Now that you mentioned that it's heavily relying on memory, I don't really have a great sense of direction either. And if you make 3 turns on the way to somewhere, I'm going to use Google Maps the next time I do it too. I'm not going to be like, I got this. So...
You would have not done well on a Viking ship, is what you're getting at.
I would have needed every tool of what was then modern technology.
The sun.
And,
there you go. You have it. Cloudy, up, out of power.
No, they had something. I forget. They had like crystals. They had some.
Yes, they did.
They had something.
They did.
I always blame myself for not having a good sense of direction because I didn't pay attention to the right things. Like, it was more important to me to have the music going, and I didn't feel like I was doing the right things to study the roads, study the directions that I'm going, and paying attention to that. And you're saying that this could be possibly an intuitive sense that people have that we are missing.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I'm afraid that I'm not able to vote either.
All right. Listeners, we need you to weigh in. Somebody who has a sense of direction. You got to let us know. We'll make the final decision, but we need more input.
Yeah, there are people that like can migrate. That what was that movie with the two dogs and the cat that got trapped out?
Not Milo and Otis. That is Homeward Bound.
Homeward Bound. I mean,
Michael J. Fox.
There are isolated real life stories where family pets find their way home like that, and there's no way. You drop me off somewhere, I'm done.
I'm starving. You're 3 blocks away. Where's the sun?
I'm the ultimate domesticated man.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. We're going to have to put that one in limbo for now. But here's one that we can relate to. Pain.
Pain. I say related to touch.
Oh, I'm going to go with internal as well, though. If all our listeners on our podcast players right now are curious, go to the YouTube Ground Radio and look up health. That's the one where I talk about kidney stones and appendix. Mostly interchangeable because I couldn't keep them straight. But that's internal pain.
Are you saying that touch means that we're only talking about touch to skin to environment contact?
Yes.
Is that why?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't limiting it to just skin. I was saying if your body is touching something and you can feel it, then it's touch. That is from the external environment to skin contact.
So if you touch something that's sharp, you get pain. That's going through your touch receptors. But what about internal pain that you can't touch? Are those going through your touch receptors? I don't believe so.
No, the reason why I thought that pain and touch are one and the same is because when we get numbed for a procedure in the dentist or at the doctor, not only do I not feel the pain, I don't feel the part of the body at all. Let's say it was my toe or my tooth, my gum area, something like that. That part of your body almost doesn't exist. You could do anything to it. You can't tickle it either. It doesn't hurt, but you can't feel it. And so that's why I thought, okay, well, they're one and the same. They're both disabled the same way, and they're both related to each other.
I am going to vote pain is a sense, and I am going to vote that because of internal indications.
Yeah, and you definitely experienced that. That was one of the things we were trying to inform the listener about in health was, hey, your body gives you a signal, a very clear signal when you have a kidney stone, and you can't just walk it off or sleep it off. You got to go get help.
All right. So it is important for survival.
It was essential. Absolutely.
Okay. The last one in this group that we're going to talk extensively about, sense of time.
Now, I noticed you put that on there, and I want to say I didn't see a sense of time on any lists that I was looking at, on the articles that I was reading.
Oh, you think I went rogue? Maybe I did. I'm not a slave to the internet. I'm just saying I can come up with my own concepts.
I'm saying I'm surprised to see it there, and I think that it's not a sense. I think that, as we were saying with direction, and now, on the other hand, I have a good sense of time. I do not have a good sense of direction, but I...
so it's not a sense, but if it is, mine's awesome.
Well,
no,
I'm not saying I have a sense of time. All right, I have a good grasp of time. I think my experience and my personality has given me an edge where I can estimate time better than the average person. That's what I'm saying.
All right. So this is where I did add this, and I'm not confident that it belongs in here, but I did want to talk about it because
I caught you.
If you are able to realize how long, not exactly to the second or minute, but, duration, is that not processing information?
You are processing information, but it's not a sense that points to one part of the body. It's a lot of
the brain.
Different.
It's the brain, man. I know, and I am no neuroscientist at all. I am an electrician, so I have read that the sensation of time is experienced through various parts of the brain. And that's where some people were kind of, is it a sense? Is it not a sense? Some people are better experiencing time than others. But it's also a constant thing. It's a never-changing thing. Whereas you're getting information from something, it's hot, it's cold, it's smooth, it's rough. That's all comparable. Time is never changing. It's always constant. So,
right, but we're not always aware of it either.
So the thing that is sensing it is also the thing that's confused by it sometimes, accelerating and decelerating it. I mean, trust me, this morning I slept in because I hit the snooze button, and I didn't know the difference between 10 minutes and an hour and a half. Are you going to give me a solid no on time?
Well, I'm giving you a solid no, and I'm trying to formulate why. I'm saying that I like when a sense is neat and cropped up into like one part of the body has this function for this sense. And when you're talking about, again, it seems like a memory thing. I know how long it takes me to sing that song in my head, and I know how long it takes me to walk up and down the stairs, so therefore I know that 2.5 minutes has passed, or something like that, is all out of experience, not because your body has an intuitive ability to do this.
All right. Since I am also abstaining from this because this was my concept, not necessarily mine, but I'm taking credit for it, I'm going to let it up to the listeners. If anyone has my back, let us know. If not, then, whatever. I guess I'm just the idiot then. No big deal.
Time exists outside of everything.
You were going real deep, and then you just kind of stopped.
Yeah, I was like, it just... Well...
That was like listening to Aristotle, but then all of a sudden his cell phone rang. All right, now we are going to go rapid round with these ones, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Hunger.
Yes.
Good. I guess that's what I was waiting for more, but yeah, that's hunger. Yes. Stretch receptors, which are in your stomach, that also adds to the stomach gas, also known as the fart sensor. Is that a sense?
Okay, and so this is different from the one that tells you have to go to the bathroom. You're saying
no, it's related. There was like
okay.
4 of them that are all basically stretch receptors in your digestive system. I'm grouped them together, and I'm calling it the fart sensor. Fart sensor. Is that a sense?
Yes, I say anything that involves entering and exiting the body is a sense, and it's separate from the others.
Don't worry, folks. We're not going to get too deep into that one. CO2 level sensor.
Oh, God. We all know what that feels like. The feeling of suffocation. The one that they exploit for waterboarding. Yeah, that's its own thing. That's its own beast.
All right. Gag reflex.
Here we go again. Entering and exiting the body. Yes.
But is it touch?
Well, it's not the skin.
I don't know.
Where does the skin end and the throat begin?
This took a really fun turn on this one. All right. And my favorite.
Okay, here we go.
The headache sensor.
The headache sensor.
Headache sensor. The headache sensor, to clarify,
yeah,
it senses the dilation of blood vessels in your body. And I love this caveat. It could be sensed as pain.
Yeah, a headache. How peculiar.
But yes, and I am a longtime sufferer from headaches and migraines, and I understood that the blood vessels being restricted caused them. So that has actually changed the way I live my life, because I know, okay, I need to stay hydrated. I need to avoid caffeine at certain times. I need to this. So I am going to say headache sensor is a fantastic way to know what's going on in your body without really knowing what's going on with your body.
Now, right, it's just like a warning, like
yeah, it's the check engine light for your body. It doesn't mean anything, but something's wrong.
That's way better than my sound effect. You're saying that the headache sensor will tell you if you have dilated blood vessels in another area of your body. I didn't realize that. I thought they just would be the dilated blood vessels in your head.
Well, I always believed that it was your head, but that's mainly because there are just more blood vessels in your head.
Okay, because there's a lot of blood flow up there with the brain needing so much oxygen.
And they're smaller. From my understanding, I'm not a veiniologist, but they are smaller.
Veiniologist.
So they would be more susceptible to dilation.
Okay. Well, I don't want to say I'm a sufferer from migraines, but headaches did also force me to drink more water and get the nicotine out of my life and kind of not be a slave to caffeine. It is interesting how some simple little changes like that can make a big difference on how you feel.
Seems to be related to poisons.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're saying it's its own sense because we both know what it's like to have horrible headaches.
All right. That is the end of the lightning round, even though that last one was far from lightning. So we are saying yes to hunger, CO2, fart. Gag is questionable. We're not sure where the skin ends and the throat begins. And yes to headache, dude. We have a lot of senses. I stopped counting, but it's more than 5. So
one of my favorite things that I ran into while reading about these was there was one article that made an effort to minimize the senses. There's a slippery slope here where you could say, well, my tongue has many senses. So my taste in itself is a sense of sweet and a sense of sour and a sense of bitter. And you could do that with smells and we could have hundreds of thousands of scents. But if you want to go the other direction and minimize it, touch and sound are both mechanical.
You're saying mechanical because it's the vibration that really is sound. Your eardrum vibrates the tiny bones in your ears.
Yes.
Okay, so that's mechanical. Understood.
Yes, and then most of the ones we just went through in the lightning round there, and also smell and taste are chemical. Those are all things that interact with chemicals in the environment and then give your body a cue to react a certain way.
Okay, they stimulate that certain receptors.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The final one would be light, which we use with our eyes. I don't think...
Photoreceptors, yes.
I don't think any other part of our body interacts with light the way, like the eyes. So you could say, instead of light, you could say, sight, chemical, and mechanical. And those are all of our senses boiled down into how we interact with our environment in the minimalist way.
Okay. I mean, this podcast would have been a lot shorter if we would have just done that.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of glad we didn't, but okay.
All the lols, though.
Yes. Okay, so what you're saying is instead of the 55 senses that I think we have, we should go to those 3, and you're just they're more broad, but they're specifically more broad because you could just start overanalyzing down.
I don't want to say I necessarily like it better, but I liked the perspective of stretching it out to all the things we're capable of sensing to taking it down to the most basic level. I thought that was a good way to look at it and think about it.
All right. Do you think we know all the senses?
I'd like to think that we've taken just about everything we know how and tried to measure it and study it and reproduce the results to the point where we've exhausted all the action on this planet. But no, we're discovering new things all the time. So it would be very closed-minded of me to say that we've studied all there is to study about how we can interact with the world.
I am going to propose either a 6th, a 56th, or a 4th sense, depending on which standard you're going to use. And I'm going to go with electromagnetic senses.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going with that is because our guilty pleasure in this household is watching Ghost, Master, Talker, Hunter, Predator, whatever we're watching.
Okay.
They're all the same, but just the same. It's a bunch of people yelling and asking if you felt that through the television.
Does one of you feel more guilty than the other about it?
I feel guilty when I let go of all the comments that I am saying while watching this. Well, my wife is sitting there taking notes and actually interested in it. I feel guilty for distracting her the whole time.
I was curious.
But one thing I have noticed is that in areas where people believe they're being watched or there's a presence around them,
yeah,
there always seems to be a few scientific things happening. One, there is a strange electromagnetic field of some sort, such as old wiring or there's quartz or something around there that would actually affect an electromagnetic field.
Okay.
And the other is that there is low hums, a frequency lower than what we can hear.
Yeah.
That our body is still perceiving.
Subsonic, man.
Yeah. So they don't understand it, so they chalk it up to an explanation which is paranormal.
But there have been reports of spirits and ghosts and unexplainable paranormal activity well before there was ever electricity. So it's hard to believe that it would be connected in that way, where you have to be in the area of electricity already working to experience the paranormal situation.
But I'm still going to go with there's still magnetic forces in Earth.
Yes.
It is one theory of how the salmon can always remember the stream that they spawned in is
Yes.
magnetic forces. Now, we don't know if that's true or not, but who's to say that they can do it and we can't? We just maybe don't understand it as much.
Right. Absolutely, I can say that we don't understand it that much. It was just interesting that you mentioned that it was noticeable when you were in the presence of electricity.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the hum goes, have you heard of the hum? Do you know the I think it's capital H hum, the hum.
But there's a specific hum?
Well,
is it my tinnitus? Is that the hum?
oh boy. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's the whine.
That's the me complaining. Did you hear that?
And about tinnitus, I also have a high-pitched whine when it's completely silent. And are there people out there, and I'm polling the listeners here, that can actually just sit in silence? Because I remember even as a kid, now, sure, I've abused my ears with, music and rocking out and blasting my headphones all the time. But
and talk radio.
I remember as a child having a little ringing in my ears when it was completely quiet. I thought that was just part of life. I thought that was like just frequency of my eardrums idling. I don't know. But
oh no. Yeah. My tinnitus diagnosis came from whenever I was going through a hearing test from work, and they said, "Do you have tinnitus?" I go, "I don't believe so." They go, "Do you have a ringing in your ears whenever it's silent?" I go, "Oh no." And then they left the room, and I was in silent, and I heard this ringing in my ears, and I'm like, "Oh, I guess I've always had this. I just never noticed it."
That's pretty funny. I don't know what it was. I remember laying in my room as a little kid with no noise, maybe just the clock ticking, and hearing that high-pitched whine. And anyway, thought it was normal.
So what is the hum?
The hum is where there are a very small group of people. It says 2% of people, and they live in certain areas. They experience at nighttime when everything is quiet and there's no other bustle of the town or where they live. There's a very low-pitched hum that drives them crazy, and it permeates through their house. There's no way you can close the window or avoid it, and they are suffering. I mean, it's driven people insane. They've decided to move. I think there was some cases of suicide. They went out of their way to say it's not city noise. It's not a rumbling, subway or something. They did a lot of studies to the people who can perceive it. And it usually happens where it is more quiet, a little more rural, more separated. There's a theory that it could be the earth itself resonating, or tectonic plates. There's a lot of different things that they think are going on, but nobody can prove it. And it's very hard to study because such a small group of people can actually experience it. But it's got to be a real thing, because people have been reporting these things as early as 1828, and there was an article in the 70s that was released about it in Great Britain, and there was an overflow of all these people confirming that, yes, this is something that I have experienced, and it drives me crazy. I don't know what to do about it.
This makes me feel like there needs to be a study of finding one of the people that were driven crazy by the hum, recording from that area, and then finding that person in another area and playing it to see if they can hear it again.
Yeah.
I want to commission that, so please support us so I can commission this study.
You really want to get to the bottom of this hum thing?
Well, because I'm also thinking that if it's coming through recording, what if I live in a hum area and people listening to this podcast are being driven mad through the hum that's coming through my microphone?
Well, as long as we save it in MP3, it'll be snipped out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes me feel like we should put some type of media converter on these people. Okay. All right. Huh.
MP3 goes out of its way to take out. That's how they make the file so small. Is they take out the things that the human ear can't.
They take out the maddening hum that is probably prevalent in my
That's
area.
a lot of bandwidth.
My tinnitus is there just to block this hum. This is a survival skill.
Oh, you have like your own noise canceling eardrums.
Yes, this is great.
Wow.
All right. Okay, so I feel it's safe to say that we don't know all that we're capable of doing, but we have a pretty good grasp so far.
Yeah. Well, that Ben Underwood is showing us a thing or two.
Yeah. Hey, just because dolphins and bats can do it doesn't mean that we can either. We show them.
I mean, and look how cats can see in such low light. They don't need more than maybe the LED on, my charging phone, and they can see everything in the room. It's pretty incredible.
When it comes to senses, we got the short end of the stick as far as the animal kingdom goes. Like, we have intelligence. That was our thing. But I mean, other than that, we are terrible as far as senses go.
Interesting. Definitely true for smell. I'm not so sure sight. We do okay. We don't do as good as birds, but as mammals go, I think we're doing okay for sight.
Dude, we can't hunt at night. Like, no.
Well, what about colors, though?
No. Colors, we have one more. Is that a cell or I forget? We can see
the cones and the
3
rods.
Colors. Yes, that allows us to see 3. Dogs can see 2, but I believe it is the mantis shrimp. Everything that can see has photoreceptors, like we said, that it has light that we can take in and we can see the world. We have 3 where most mammals have 2.
Oh.
So we see a better range of colors than a dog.
Okay.
But butterflies have 6.
Wow.
And the mantis shrimp has 12.
They have 12 different colors to draw from to create the world around them.
Yeah, dude, they see colors that we don't see.
They see UV light and stuff, probably.
I don't know.
Well, ultraviolet is above violet, so,
It's true, but we're talking about the visible spectrum. The visible spectrum, as far as we're concerned, is the rainbow. They're seeing colors in between the rainbow that we don't even understand.
Huh. I wonder why they need to see the colors so intensely. What's going on down in the... I mean, do they live in, like, the depths of the ocean, or what's going on?
Yeah. None of your business.
That's what I want to get to the bottom of.
We're just seeing colors you can't even perceive.
You commission your hum thing. I'm going to commission the mantis shrimp. Everybody get your checkbooks out.
All right, now that we made you feel inferior that you can't see, but the good news is you can listen. You can listen to us on YouTube. We're going to post this up, and hopefully I figured it out, and we can get this up on the podcast players.
That is a pretty involved process we're learning.
I feel like it's going to be easy, but I feel like it's the studying something and looking something up, and whenever somebody who has done something so many times tries to explain it to you, they just assume you know everything, and you have no clue. But hopefully it'll be up. Paul, I enjoyed this one. Ran long, but I enjoyed talking to you about it.
I am very excited for what's to come, and
you sound it.
I'm very excited for what's to come, and I enjoyed it as well. And until next time, we'll talk soon.
You got it, bud. Talk to you later.